The Fed has increased interest rates. How is this going to impact you and me? Let's find out. In March itself, the Fed has increased interest rate by 0.25%. So how is this affecting our investments in Singapore property today? So when we look at the rates that we can get from like Singapore banks today for like a home mortgage loans, right? The lowest that we can get is actually SORA plus 0.55%. 3-month SORA plus 0.55%. So today's SORA is about 0.23%. So when you add 0.23 to 0.55%, the effective interest rate that we'll be paying, right, is 0.78%. So what does these numbers actually mean? So let's take an example. For example, today we have a property that is $1.2 million, and in the Singapore context, we can take a 75% loan. And with this, right, with the mortgage term of an estimated 30 years and the interest rate of 0.78%, when we calculate this out, right, what we see is that the monthly installment is going to be $2,804.71. So when we look at these numbers, right, what you see is that in the first month of paying the monthly installment, the principal component is actually $2,219.71. This principal means, right, the amount of money that goes into the property to reduce the loan month by month. So in other words, right, this is actually a form of forced savings. So we are being forced to save, and if we sell the property, we can actually get back this principal. So our true expense, right, in property investment or in owning a property, right, is actually the interest component. And the interest component, right, if you look at the month one, is actually at $585. So what does this mean? This means that today, if I'm buying a $1.2 million property, my true cost of owning the property itself, assuming that the property prices don't come down, it is actually the interest cost of like $585 plus MCST plus property tax. So this is still very affordable, especially when you consider against renting the property itself. So what if interest rates actually double, like from 0.78% to like 1.56? So when we go back to the calculator, right, and put in 1.56%, right, what you see is that when we do the calculations, the monthly installment will increase to $3,132. So in actual fact, right, the amount of money out of pocket, right, is not dramatic. And when we look at the components in the month one, we want to look at what is our true cost of staying in the property itself. It is just going up to $1,170. So in other words, right, a doubling of interest rate, right, does not mean a doubling of monthly installments. So that's point number one. And point number two, right, is that when we look at the interest component itself, we will know that with the increase of interest, there will be an increase in cost of ownership. But comparing this with the alternative is the main question. Is this still way more worth it than renting a property? I would think so. So this is why, right, when it comes to the Singapore context, I would rather be buying and owning the property I'm staying in rather than renting. Also, if I'm worried about taking on a floating interest rate and like having interest rates rises and increases over like this months or years, right, the alternative is to take on the fixed interest loan, which is at about 1.65% in today's context. But having said this, right, this means that we are actually paying a premium. So once again, recall the floating rate is 0.78 versus the fixed rate at 1.65 is quite a huge gap in my opinion. So if I am someone, right, that can't sleep or like have difficulty sleeping, right, knowing that interest rate may rise in the future, then I will take the fixed rate. But for someone like me, right, that can afford an interest rate rise, or like I have budgeted in sufficient cash flow to pay these for this increased interest rate, and I am able to sleep soundly at night, then I would rather take on a floating interest rate package instead. So I hope you learned something here today, and I'll see you soon. The Fed has hiked interest rates. Singly, okay, one more time. The Fed has okay, one more time. Now.